Hello everyone, thank you for joining me and my panelists who are here in the background waiting to start the conversation. Thank you so much for coming today. I don't know what it's like where you are, but I'm looking out at blue skies and sunshine, so I hope it's like that where you are. My name is Margaret Keane and I'm Education Training and Development Officer here with Midwest ARIES. And as I said, delighted to be here and have this, what I hope is an honest conversation around self-care and what it looks like. Obviously, I'm, as I said, Education Training Development Officer with Midwest ARIES, and we operate out of the Midwest. So we cover Clare, Limerick and Tipperary. And we also develop and co-produce a range of educational programs to help people on their recovery from mental health challenges. ARIES, by the way, stands for Advancing Recovery in Ireland Education Service. In a moment, I'll introduce the panelists that we have here with us. But I just need to go through a couple of housekeeping points. So bear with me for a moment. I might be looking slightly to the right, just because I have all my notes here. So yeah, basically we're going to be an hour's running time today. We'll have a Q&A session, and we found this to be a really great interactive way of having these discussions. So if you have a question on self-care, whatever that is, if you could put it into the Q&A section there should be a button down at the bottom nav, that little black section at the bottom of your screen. I'll try and get to as many questions as I possibly can, but just bear with us. So we'll start from the get-go. Just start putting your questions in there now. And then what we'll do is we'll finish off with a lovely meditation piece that's recorded by Cillian, our peer Education Training and Development Officer here in Midwest ARIES, and that's it's a calming, colourful meditation. So I can't wait for us to get there. So that's what it's going to look like. Very relaxed. Another thing, I nearly forgot, just to let you know, we are recording this session. I'm delighted to record it because it means then that if for those who can't make it today, they can view it on our YouTube channel. And I also want to give a shout out to those people who are listening in on our podcast, the Wellbeing or the Wellness Panel, either on Spotify or Anchor FM or anywhere where you can actually listen to podcasts. I think I've covered everything, but I'm sure our panelists will come in and let me know if I've forgotten anything. So if I can just invite the panelists to start their videos, please, and I'll just do a quick round of introductions. So I'll start with the lovely Claire Flynn from Mental Health Ireland. Claire, we missed you last month. It's great to have you back. Do you want to say hello to everybody?
Hello, everybody. It's great to be back, and thank you very much for having me.
Great stuff, Claire, and thanks for making it today. And Aoife, do you want to say hello to everybody?
Hi everyone, my name is Aoife and I'm a recovery education facilitator, and this is my first time, I suppose, since I started working with ARIES, taking part in the webinar. So I'm really looking forward to today and to getting a bit of discussion going around the topic of self-care. You know, I think it's something that people are talking about a lot recently. You know, I think people have faced a lot of challenges, you know, as of late, and I think we're facing, you know, more changes now kind of coming out of lockdown again. So I just think, you know, it's a really good time for people to kind of start having conversations about self-care and start, you know, prioritizing that in our own lives. So hopefully people might get some ideas today from our discussion. So thanks, Margaret.
Aoife, it's great to have you here, and what we're trying to do every month with this is have different voices, so I'm delighted you can be here. And as you rightly said, we're coming out of lockdown now. Self-care is probably becoming more and more important as we kind of re-enter into what was that real life, what we had 2 years ago, and trying to figure out what that's going to look like for each other. So thanks, Aoife, great to have you here. Mike, how are you? Do you want to say hello to everybody?
Yeah, just hit the unmute button. Yeah, it's great to be here again. I thought I was off the hook this month, and I said to give somebody else a chance, but no, I was taken back in off the subs bench again. So anyway, no, delighted to be here, and it's a nice, safe way to have these conversations. You know, they're positive. Hopefully, somebody will take something from it. And as I would say, even like if people picked up one tip, it's one tip you never had. you know, so it's not about changing your life, changing the world, changing anything, but it's kind of, as I would say, every time, you know, whether you attend, you know, a workshop that we run or that Mental Health Ireland run, or the kind of, so, or read a book, you know, or you hear something that somebody says, but if you can pick up one thing as you go along, then you'll have a lot of things, you know, that can help you. So no, it's great to be here. Thanks again.
Thanks, Mike. We couldn't leave you sitting on the subs bench for very long. Mike is our manager here at Midwest ARIES. He's our guide. He keeps us on the path. So, and as you said, yeah, it is that one thing, and it's that light bulb moment. I know every time we have these discussions, I certainly come away with lots of ideas and strategies. So thanks, Mike. That's great. Cillian, you want to say hello?
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. Hello, everyone. My name is Cillian, and I'm the Peer Education Training and Development Officer here at Midwest ARIES. So just really looking forward to today's session as well. I was on a previous webinar before, so this topic of self-care is something that I really enjoy talking about. So hopefully those tuning in can take something positive away from today's session as well. So looking forward to the discussion. And we always say that the wisdom is in the room, that we learn from each other as well. So that's really important as well. So thanks, Margaret.
Brilliant, Cillian. And we've spent, actually, July has been self-care month with Midwest ARIES. I know we developed some modules, and actually we've got more coming on stream next month. So I'm really interested to hear your just your views on self-care, Cillian, particularly on the kind of physical health. I know that's one of your passions, so delighted that you can be here. Mags, how are you? Lovely to have you here. Do you want to say hello to everyone?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm up here in County Cork, and as Margaret said, it's lovely sun down in Limerick side, not so much up here. It's just after getting very dark actually outside. Yeah, I'm a recovery education facilitator with Midwest ARIES, and I suppose I didn't realize how important self-care was until we went into lockdown, and then it kind of started to hit me. And I suppose since we're kind of coming out of it now and life is getting busier, it's just good to talk about it and get the tips and the ideas. Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Great, Mags. And I'll try and send you some of our, well, I'm in County Clare at the minute. I'll try and send you some of our sunshine down your way. So we're blowing it down there because it is beautiful. And thanks for joining. Great to have you here today. So look, everybody said hi. We're here together. Let's just have an honest and open conversation, if we can, around self-care. And I might start with you, Claire. I think Aoife just brought it up there. There's a kind of buzzword around, you know, self-care at the minute. And during our recent workshops, as I said, July was kind of self-care month for us. People really struggle with that idea of self-care. And I don't know, I think a lot of people think it's, you know, it's costly to do. It's, you know, it's that kind of, I suppose, spa day moment as opposed to the everyday. So for you, what does self-care look like, feel like, Claire?
Well, it used to look like that it was an occasional thing that I would do. You know, it might be like that, a treat of maybe going to get a facial or maybe my nails done or meeting somebody for lunch or something like that. So, but over the last number of years, it has become much more everyday than that, much more personal than that for me. Because I realized that I had to look after myself every day, you know, to look after my own wellness every day had to include my own self-care. For me, it was initially quite a hard concept to start to get used to doing for myself and making myself a priority. Because like so many people, I had other responsibilities in my life, and they, you know, were the first, you know, the main priority for a long time. And that happens quite a lot of people as well. But for me, what changed my concept of self-care was I did a rock course a couple of years ago. And that really started me on my journey of looking at what supports me in my wellness and how I can do that for myself. And that includes stuff that I do every day, as well as stuff that I might do occasionally and other treats like that. So it still includes the treat, like if I can't get a spa day, I'm taking it, you know, or facial. It definitely includes that as well. But it also includes having boundaries around work and other relationships and stuff like that. For me, the boundaries is probably the most important part, in that being able to say no to something if it doesn't support me and my wellness. It's a hard, very, very hard thing to learn how to do, incredibly hard. But I found that once I did learn that, it really, really supported me in my self-care. And I'm delighted to see that so many more people are talking about it, but it is like that. It can be quite confusing. You know, just what I mean, I'm on Instagram and social media and stuff like that. So it's like, you know, these provisioned supportive quotes and different things like that come up, you know, and it can be really, really hard, particularly if anybody's having, and I do have my bad days as well. It can be like, okay, I can't go to the spa today. You know what I mean? Or, you know, or I don't have the capacity to do this today. So I'm sure it can be quite irritating as well sometimes. But what I've learned about it, it's a personal journey. You know, it's about what I feel works for me rather than what other people are telling me might work. So I've gotten better at it, but that's not to say that I do it well every day. I try to achieve it every day, but not every day do I achieve it. But I forgive myself for that as well. So that's what self-care is to me at the moment.
I think actually, I think the boundaries piece, you're absolutely on the money, is just so important. Both, as you said, in your kind of personal relationships, your work relationships. And if I can segue into a promo for next month, we'll be looking at that very subject, which is boundaries, was just taking this forward a little bit further, but absolutely. And we just have a comment here from one of our participants. It's a good idea to schedule time. Is it a good idea to schedule time in your diary for self-care? I think it may help me as I feel like it's commitment and then feel obliged to do it. Thanks so much. And I suppose just even on that, Mike, and I'll come to you next. Again, in terms of what self-care looks like to you, but from the daily piece and the maintenance piece, do you think that's a good idea to actually schedule it in?
Yeah, I think so, because I was just scribbling here that's a brilliant question and a suggestion at the same time. Because when we look at the week, and I was just doing quick sums, hard sums here, well, like there's 168 hours in a week. And if we're fortunate enough to sleep 8 hours a night, well, that's 56 hours. And that then leaves 112 hours. And if we have a job and it's 40 hours, it still leaves 72 hours in the week. So when you look at that, that's a massive amount of time that we fill, you know. So yes, you know, so if you can diary it in and put that commitment into yourself. And I suppose, and I was thinking around this, so what does word self-care look like? And I suppose it's a word I love, and it's about honoring ourselves. It's not about, you know, I'm prioritizing my needs over yours, or my time is more valued than yours, or I'm disrespecting you, you know, in any way, shape, or form. It's about just honoring ourselves as we're all unique, we're all individuals, and we have the right, you know, it's a basic human right to be able to do it as well. And again, harder to practice than we preach. You know, and again, I'm not that good at the moment. I went to pot with COVID and the restrictions. I still have the COVID stone, it won't go away, but I'm not doing a whole lot about it either. And I suppose just to shift it, you know, just slightly as well. And I suppose for me, it was a light bulb moment, and it was 2005. And again, I was attending a counsellor, and we used to fight like cat and dog, because like I had my thinking patterns, I was locked in, and don't anybody come near me or challenge me. But I love being challenged, because that then forces me to change my thinking. And she was a brilliant woman, because she always won. and I admire that. But in it, she was saying, and she had to be very direct, you know, you're not doing this, and what you need to do is, you know, so it wasn't like, would you consider or advise, you know, the way counselling is.
Oh, I think we might have lost Mike there. So I'm just, Mike, we've just lost you there. So I'm going to just step in for a moment if you can hear me. And I think actually what I love about Mike, and this is like working with Mike, is
she was telling, I said, I'm not doing that. I said, sure.
And this is what happens on Zoom. And so for anybody listening in on our podcast, I'm not even going to bother editing this out. This is what happens, delays and all the rest of it. I was just going to say, Mike, you are back. And one thing you always do with us is you make us clear in terms of what are you spending your time on, and that time management piece in terms of making time for self-care. And like, even just when you said that, I'm kind of like, yeah, actually, I do have time. And I know during one of our workshops, we have a worksheet that's all about that in terms of how do I spend my time. And when you look at it, it gives you that whoa moment. Do you want to finish that thought, Mike, and then I'll go on to somebody. I'll go on to Aoife next.
And I suppose I don't know if you caught the bit there. I was probably bumped out, or I was in La La Land talking to myself. But I suppose there was a moment when I was talking with I was attending a counsellor 2005, and I love being challenged. But she put it to me, what you need to do is, and I didn't know what the conversation was or where she was going. And I said, I'm not doing that. I said, that's selfish. But what and then why is it selfish? And the way she came at them was, why is selfish a bad thing? But in reality, what the penny actually dropped in, it was, no, she was saying, I needed to be, we have a responsibility to ourselves, so it wasn't, so for me, that was the light bulb moment, switching the selfish to the self-care. And up until that point, I had no awareness. Well, yes, I was doing things that may have been nourishing me and were working, but I wasn't aware. Now I can look back and see that I was doing certain things, because sometimes we can tap back into, well, when I was functioning, why was I functioning? When I was really well and bright and sparky and life was good, what was actually happening? So we were probably with the right people, we were doing the right things, we were nourishing our spirit and soul. So at some level, we're always doing self-care, even if we're not aware of it, But again, if we're lagging, sometimes it's a bit like coming back to as Claire said, we can work on it, build our plan, get it in there. The time is there. So I better give someone else.
No, thanks, Mike. And no, it is that light bulb moment. It is, you have time. And Aoife, in terms of yourself, what does self-care look like to you? I do have a couple of really great questions coming in, but I just want you to just get your opinion on that, because I know in terms of your background, slightly different.
I suppose I always kind of found it a bit of a difficult question to kind of answer before, what it meant to me, but I suppose how I feel, what it means to me now is, it's like taking actions in my life to, to keep myself healthy and well, like both mentally and physically, so that I can go, I can function well, and that I can do, I can go about my life, do my job to the best of my ability. I can have positive relationships with those around me, and generally just, do things that I enjoy, and like accomplish the things that I want to in each day. And I suppose like those, those actions that I take, they'll vary a lot, day to day, based on my mood and based on how I'm feeling that day, and what I feel that my needs are at the time. So like some days, it'll look different from day to day, as I said. So like, some days I might do more kind of, like calming and kind of relaxing things, or other days then it might be more like physical things, like getting exercise, or practical things that, like maybe cleaning the house, that kind of helps me clear my head. So I suppose just generally doing things that I know in the long term will make me feel good about myself.
And actually, do you know what, Aoife, you've gone part of the way of answering one of the questions that came in from someone there. So what are the different ways to care for self? And I suppose you've mentioned a few things there, and even in terms of like being organized, cleaning the house, just like one of the joys of life is when you get a drawer, that's been, lots of stuff has been hanging around it. I don't know if anybody else has got those kitchen drawers full of stuff. And then you finally just have that energy to clear it out, and it just feels so good. It's a bit like clearing the mind. Does anyone else want to come in there in terms of what are the different ways to care for self? Mags, for instance, do you have any ideas in terms of that? And we'll answer this question.
Well, I suppose, yeah, actually when we had the lockdown, I think everybody kind of took stock of their lives and what they were doing and where their lives were going. And I suppose self-care then became very important to me. And as Claire had said, the boundaries that came into my life, with boundaries with certain people. And as Aoife said, I mean, as you said yourself, self-care isn't like going to the spa, or it could be, for me, self-care is, I love painting outside. I paint the house all day outside, but I find that as therapy for me. I find that very therapeutic. Stick on a headset and listen to the radio and off you go. So that's kind of my self-care, but I'm also getting a bit of work done. And as you said, also there's a huge accomplishment in decluttering, but that's self-care for yourself as well. And they say self-care is having a relationship with yourself and where you see yourself. So yeah, I really did. It really did become very important. All right, it's a bit. I find it a bit harder now as we're kind of work is there and there's other stuff going on to find the time. But as Mike said, there's loads of time. Just you have to make it a priority really, and to do it every day. Really, the self-care. Yeah.
I think what's really great, yourself and Aoife have really brought into the discussion that self-awareness, knowing your needs and knowing it from day to day and tapping into that. Because again, and I suppose it's bringing it back to wrap as well, Claire, you know, having that self-awareness, but also having things in your toolkit that, because we know there's some days, you know, you might have a go-to. It might be, I know I've sat down to do a bit of meditation and go, I am in no way, that's not going to work for me today, because you're just not in that moment. You're not present, you're not grounded. So it may be something else, or maybe it might be turn on the music and just dance in the kitchen. You know, it might be something the opposite of that. I'll just come to you. Thanks, Mags, and thanks, Aoife, as well. Cillian, I'll just come to you on that because of that piece around the different ways to care for self. So different ways of, so I suppose we talk about the wellness dimensions. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I suppose for me, self-care is really looking after yourself on a day-to-day basis, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and doing the things that you know that will have a positive effect on our overall well-being. And I think it's intentional as well. It's about allowing yourself to really enjoy it, embrace it, and see the positive benefits of it as well. I suppose from the wellness side of it, the dimensions, I suppose the physical side of things, the emotional, the social, the intellectual, all different aspects of it as well. And I suppose the physical side is what I really hone in on a daily basis with the exercise. And I know that it just has a massive contributory factor to my overall mood day to day. I'm more happier, I'm less stressed, I'm more productive. And that's what I hone into on a daily basis as well. But I think it's about having that self-awareness around it as well. What really works for you is individual to each person, and what works for me might be totally different to someone else as well. But I think that self-care is just a lifelong process that really that we have to come to the realization that we deserve to be treated with compassion, kindness, and care, and most of all by ourselves, which is really, really important, you know. And yeah, that's what I think, Margaret, anyway.
I love you brought up those two in terms of self-compassion. And Mike, that kind of brings back to that honoring yourself. Because again, that myth is there that somehow self-care is selfish. But I know again in our workshop, I think it comes up time and time again, is that you can't pour from an empty cup. And particularly if you are there to care for others, and lots of us are in caring roles of one form or another, either in our families or with friends. And it's so important that we find that time just to make sure that, you know, we are looking after ourselves. And I suppose, like, let's get down to basics again. And I'm presuming the answer is yes, but is self-care important for well-being? Is it something, you know, we should be doing? Should we be making time for this? Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I learned is that, because I saw on the question series, you know, is it something that I should do? You know, and there are aspects to my self-care that I feel I have to do, that I should do. And part of it is because I want to feel well as I can every day. And part of it is because I do have responsibilities and I want to take care of those responsibilities as best as I can as well. And you know, so some of it is like that is, you know, that I try and have a daily routine. I try and make sure I stick to that routine, and that really supports me every day, you know, to feel prepared for whatever the day may bring. And then, as I said, then I have the occasional ones. And then one thing that really worked for me in terms of self-care was I always linked physical fitness, because it is really, really good for the head and the body, but I always linked it only to my body. So it was always linked to my body image. And once I stopped actually connected to that and just connected it to my mind, I actually found I enjoyed it far more, because I wasn't worried about what size of anything was. I was only worried about how do I feel when I'm walking out the door after doing it. And that actually really helped me to do it much more regularly, because I wasn't then getting disappointed with maybe what I might have been on a scale or something like that. So within that, then I'm taking care of my physical fitness. But for me, the benefit is really with my mental health, and that it really, really supports that. And as self-care, just as another, that links into that, I have to go in the morning, because if I leave it all day, it won't get done. You know, I just, I know it's 5 o'clock, I'm too tired, I have to do the dinner, can't do it, and that's okay. So I go to an 8 o'clock class. And what I had to do was I had to ask my husband to get up earlier when the kids were in school, take the kids to school so that I could do that. And I felt bad asking him to put himself out, what I felt out of the way to do that for me. Do you know what I mean? And that was just a way that I was trying to advocate for myself, that I really needed to do this. It was really going to be beneficial for me. But that selfish part that you were talking about, Mike, I was feeling, God, is this selfish? I'm asking him to put himself out of his way. He had no problem doing it. It was all me thinking there was something wrong with it. There wasn't anything wrong with it. But but that's something, and that was something I was able then to incorporate into my routine. So self-care is so varied. It's like, it might feel selfish initially, but it's about putting yourself as a priority. And it's not that you're, as you might say, not your bigger priority than anybody else. You're the same priority as anybody else. You're not making anybody else more important than you are. You're just giving yourself the same importance. And the effect it has had on me, both in terms of my self-esteem and in my general wellness and my general happiness. And now it's taken me a couple of years to get to this stage. I'm not saying that it's an overnight solution at all, but it has really, really supported me in my wellness and how I feel about myself, and really, really helping me to achieve my goals as well. So for me, it is a should. You should do it. Make time for it. Make it a priority. Put something in your diary that there's nothing else can kick that out of the diary for you. It's as important as just say going to the doctor. If I want to pick something important, it's something you cannot miss. Because it is just that important for everybody, I believe, anyway.
Absolutely. And I think, I suppose it's just finding the time to do that. And I suppose one question I put out to everybody, do you think, and why do you think this is, if you think this is true, that it's easier to care for others rather than ourselves? You said there, Claire, and I completely understand, you had to make that decision to ask. And in your head, maybe there was a scenario in terms of how your husband was going to react to that or view that. And yet he, as you said, no problem at all. That's it, grand. But to actually get to the point where you had to ask for your own needs, like that's huge. And I think particularly for women sometimes have a problem with that. So does anybody want to come in on that?
I'll just come in on that. And again, it's just linking it back, I think, to the word about like that self-compassion thing. And there's a question there in there as well. And it kind of fits as well. It's kind of, how do I stop myself feeling guilty when I don't practice that piece of self-care that I had set out to do on a certain day? Because like I find energy is something, I'm better in the morning as the day goes along and run down a fizz. And I suppose I have an answer to everything. And it's kind of like, well, and that's okay. So again, it's that self-compassion piece. And I think, I suppose, again, it was a light bulb moment for me, again, and as a real example, until it stares you in the face. And again, it was that same counsellor, and I was struggling with sleep at the time. And she said to me, so you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, what happens? And I said, I get really angry. I start giving out to myself. Oh, geez, here we go again. And why can't you just sleep? And going off on one and giving out and all sorts of stuff, but it was all directed inwards, And then she said, well, if you were at home, she says, and there was a baby in the next room and they woke up screaming the house down, crying at 2 o'clock in the morning, what would you do? And I said, well, I suppose like anyone would check, do they need a nappy change? Are they hungry? Is everything okay? Settle them back down, comfort them and help them go back to sleep. And all she said was, why aren't you doing it for yourself? And that was it. So practice self-care. So sometimes when we can't do it, when we're not able to do it, that's okay too. Because I know I use the word so when you talk about mindfulness, and so we're getting stuck into let's do something, let's have a plan, let's build it into the diary. But what works wonderful for me, and I don't call it mindfulness, I call it mindlessness. It's literally, I could sit and stare out the window and I'm calming in that. And that's time out and self-care for me, and that's the self-compassion piece, and it's back to, as Claire was saying and Cillian was saying, figure out what your needs are, maybe tap into what you did in the past and look at what works. I know I'm gone off sideways.
No, and I think it's really important. And I actually think it's not even tapping into what worked in the past. I'm just reflecting here myself. It's tapping into what you enjoy, because again, there's another question here is, how do I make self-care fun and not arduous? It's like, Claire, you were talking about the more than myself. I need to keep physically well. So I need to build in exercise, and I'd be a morning person as well. So it's like 7 o'clock out for the walk. But sometimes, on a rainy morning, that doesn't seem like fun. That doesn't seem, so how do we overcome those things and not get into that guilt trip? Because again, if you're not, I'm sure there's people here saying, oh, maybe I should be doing a bit more exercise, and which is self-defeating in itself. So how do we overcome those things? And I'm going into nice segue into barriers, because it's a huge thing that comes out time and time again. If anyone would like to disclose what their personal barriers are to practicing self-care, because we've just had a great conversation there about how good it is. And I'd like to also know how it feels as well when you do practice self-care, when you make that time. I'm getting the impression that it feels good. So if it does all those things for us, what's stopping us? So who'd like to come in? Cillian, I can see your poise there.
Yeah, I suppose a barrier for me would be sometimes the motivation, even for exercise. And I think I just have to really ask myself the question, how will this benefit me in the short term and the long term? So I have a little chat with myself, really, and I ask myself those questions that I know for getting in exercise is going to have a better effect. I'm going to be happier, my mood is going to be better, I'm going to feel better for the day and more productive and everything else like that. And that's that feeling that I kind of latch onto when I'm feeling a little bit unmotivated to do it. I try to think of all the positive things that will happen along the way that will really contribute to my own mental health and well-being. And I suppose it would be, another thing would be a barrier for me would be putting other needs first, which we kind of talked about earlier on as well, and maybe prioritizing other people before myself. But then I have a chat with myself, and I really have to focus on my own journey, my own goals, what I want to achieve in my own life, and think to myself what I really want to get out of my own self-care. And I suppose they're the barriers, and that's what really kind of hits me at different stages of life as well.
It takes, I'm just listening there to Keane, but it takes enormous strength sometimes to do that, to overcome those. Particularly, I mean, if you're not in a good place in your life, to try and overcome those. And again, I'm just, Aoife or Mags, if you want to come in on that in terms of personal barriers. So, it might be something you feel you need to do or you should be doing. And yet the little voice goes, no, I can't. Tell us, how do we overcome that?
I suppose a barrier for me sometimes is not, I think it's kind of mentioned already, but not having a plan in place. So like maybe, not, so what I've, maybe not having anything planned for tomorrow into my schedule, for my self-care. If I don't have a plan in, I can possibly tend to just not do it. So I suppose what I've kind of started doing recently is sitting down the night before, so maybe on a Monday evening for the Tuesday, sitting down and looking at my day for tomorrow. Am I working 9 till 5? When do I have a break? And I suppose the mornings that I'm working now, I'm planning to get up an hour earlier and go for a walk. Because if I don't, I might still wake up, but I might just sit in the bed. So if I plan in, I'm going to go for that walk at 7 o'clock. 9 times out of 10, if I have it wrote down and in the schedule, I'll go. So I suppose that was kind of a barrier for me in the past. And I suppose making that schedule and planning is how I've been able to overcome it now.
Yeah, and it's that planning piece, isn't it? As Mike said, like there's all these hours in the week and you kind of look and you go, I haven't got time. And like, I know I say that myself, but it is just planning it in. Now it's easy to say that because everybody has different stresses and strains in their life. We don't know that what individuals are up against. I suppose my only advice, and this is to myself, is whatever you do that's positive in your life to support your self-care, no matter how small, I'd rather I do that than, do nothing. Because sometimes if you got something big planned and it doesn't happen and it just kicks in that guilt trip, and you end up doing nothing, which makes you feel even worse. So even if it's a 10-minute walk as opposed to the hour or the half an hour, isn't it better than nothing? I can see Claire nodding away there. It's, yeah. So Mags, just again on that barrier thing, because I think it's interesting, we all have different barriers because we all have different lives. And I'd like to get a flavour, if we can, of everybody's barriers.
I suppose, as Cillian said, the motivation part for me and the exercise to get out and do something. And what I started kind of doing when we were, I suppose, when we couldn't go 2 kilometres or 5 kilometres from our house, I just went up to the woods and I kind of reconnected with nature, and I saw stuff that I hadn't seen for years. I don't know where I was, but I hadn't seen certain birds or certain animals for years. And it was like, when I'd go up, I'd see something different every day, and I'd see the seasons change as well. And what I started doing then for motivation was I'd see certain charities that were online that needed fundraising. So I think most of the team know here that I'm mad about dogs and animals. So I used to fundraise for certain charities when they might have a walk on. Most of them were walks, and I'd use that as a goal. I'd set that as a goal. So in March, I'd have to walk 50 miles. So the goal was that I saw that in, I think, start of February. So I started increasing my exercise, and it didn't become, I didn't treat it as exercise. Actually, by the end, I just love doing it. And I actually haven't done it for a few days now, and I miss it. And I think that's where it comes in, that I suppose it's the motivation can be a barrier, but if you can find a little bit of support to help you to get motivated and then to try and keep it up. And I know we all have busy lives, and something could come in and you might slip back a bit, but you always remember, I felt great when I was doing that 5K walk every day, 5 days a week. I just felt great. I'd like to get that feeling back again. So yeah, that's what
I think
hoping to get back.
I think that is absolutely a brilliant piece of advice there, because it's hooking it onto something else. It's giving a purpose to it, other than, especially if exercise is one of those things that, you know, it's not natural for you to do. And I'm talking to myself here, you know, I think it's a really great way to put purpose on that. As you said, it didn't feel like exercise there, because it really wasn't about the exercise. It was about getting that goal. That's really clever. I love that idea. And you brought in the idea of lockdown there, and obviously now we're emerging. Did anybody learn anything from lockdown about their self-care? Were there any improvements made around lockdown, around self-care? Because we're looking at lockdown and thinking lockdown equals bad, but you know, I'm not too certain about that either, because I think people learned a lot about themselves and their relationships during lockdown. So Claire, do you want to come in on that? I see you nodding your head. Is there anything that came to mind?
Previously, before lockdown, gardening and me just didn't go together. I'd be like a blight on plants. But you know, we were all fairly. I'm lucky to have a garden, and I'm lucky to have a back space that that is my own. So I just started just putting some plants and stuff like that. And one of the things that helps me in my self-care is what I used to think before was, if I was going to start something, like if someone had suggested to me meditation, I would think, oh God, I have to go on, I have to do a course in that now, and then I have to do this. But, you know, I made it into a bigger thing than thinking that I had to do all these things, you know, that shoulda, woulda, coulda, which I try not to live my life by anymore. So now if I just want to do something, I just try it in a way that suits me, you know, not what anyone else or what I think. I don't have to do a course in anything. Like, I didn't have to go and buy 50 million books in gardening. I just bought a couple of plants, some pots, and I put them in, and I was like, here's hoping. And you know, and some of them survived and some of them didn't. And I'm not giving it out to myself if some of them didn't. I'm only starting out in something, you know. But I suppose it's so individual to everybody, but that's what I did. And prior to that, now gardening would have been something that I would have said, absolutely not, it's not for me at all. But I actually got great pleasure out of it, because it took me out of my house, because I was working from home as well. So it took me out, it made my garden a whole different space for me. So I could go out there, and I found it actually quite meditative, you know, just doing that with the plants and stuff like that. And I got what other gardeners were talking about all the time, you know, about the impact that it can have on your well-being. But another point I want to make, just go back to, you know, Mike was talking about going to the counselor and stuff like that. Like, that can be self-care too. And I know, you know, like a lot of people talk about physical fitness or meditation or just yoga, whatever it might be. Like, sometimes my self-care is watching reality TV. You know what I mean? You know, because I'm like, I don't want to talk to anyone, just let me watch this for an hour, just give me a minute, please. You know, and that's self-care for me. You know, so, but or it might be, sometimes my self-care is going to my counselor, because I need to reflect on something that's been going on for me, and I need to get started out and discuss it with her, so that I can get rid of it and be done with it. And, you know, so it's very, very varied is the point I'm making. Sometimes self-care is that very deliberate act of trying to figure out, who am I, what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And then from that, everything else hopefully will fall into place. you know,
And
it's so incredibly fast. Sorry, Margaret. Yeah.
No, and yeah, absolutely. I love that word you use, deliberate act. It's a conscious act. And with that involves sometimes a bit of planning, a lot of self-compassion, and the just do it attitude that you had with the gardening, rather than I need to do this, you know, be the perfectionist, it's going to be the best garden ever, you know, and you got such enjoyment out of that. And I know Mike of old, in terms of the nature and the bird life and reconnecting with that, has been a big part of self-care, and we often have those chats, Mike.
Yeah, and I suppose it is that, and I suppose like kind of, did I learn anything in lockdown? I said, well, I know what I don't like. I don't like lockdown. I don't like COVID-19. Like, life is hard enough, you know, and I think it compounds a lot of difficulties. And I suppose, and it's kind of, when we look at that question of barriers, sometimes when we're looking at now, I'm going to implement a new self-care plan. But when we look at the barrier to it, usually if I'm going to change something for the better for myself, somebody else is going to pay the price. Because now I'm not going to be, like as Claire said, doing the school run. So unless you have a willing, you know, accomplice that will accommodate you, but it can lead to problems, because while we might be up for change, the people around us might say, oh no, I much prefer the old Mike or the old Claire, you know, because that suited me. I came in every day, the dinner was on the table. Crikey, now I have to cook a dinner on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. I don't like this new Claire. Do you know what I mean? So when we're looking at our own self-care, it doesn't mean that everybody is on board, and people don't like change. You know, so, and again, and then you say, well, what's the barrier there? I say, well, I don't want to feel I'm letting down people. I don't want to hurt people, you know, because like, we're all good, decent, kind people in the main, you know, so therefore, and it comes back to, well, why do we put other people's needs first? Because we want to be seen in a good light. We want to be seen as a carer, you know, a kind person with compassion that looks after our family and our friends, and they're there when they need me, as much as in the same way I would like them to be there for me. But that's not a two-way street all the time, you know. So, and that's the hard bit around the, you know, I have a new wellness plan. Oh, shite, you know, now there's a price to be paid, you know. So it's
Mike, that's why I love these. That's why I love these conversations, because they're very honest, and I think that is the one thing you do need support around self-care sometimes, but then you have to give and take, you know, particularly in relationships.
Yeah, and you need somebody on board. And I love what Mag said about, like, if you commit to a goal, you sign up for something. And that would say, like, so it's like if I'm going to build in a walking plan, get a walking partner. Because now when you have like, and I'm seeing, looking at Aoife on the head, she has the dog, I know. But like, there's days when you say, I don't want to do it, or the motivation is not there. But if you've made a commitment, I'm meeting so-and-so at 8:30, I'm meeting whoever in the gym, or we're meeting for a coffee. You know, because like, as I say, the hardest thing is actually 2 steps out the door. It doesn't matter what was going on in your head, but once you start, everything is okay. You know, so if you can build in, you know, an accomplice, you know, and then you're committed, you know, as well, like, kind of. So, and that could be like joining a club. It could be like even a garden club, an art group. So focus on what you like as well, you know. While we don't feel it every day, and as I say, when you're not feeling it, that's okay too. That's self-compassion piece. I better leave some.
No. Before I move on from that, I just have to say, Claire, nuclear rocks. so, Claire knew what she needed, and she asked for it. She did it obviously in a way that was open, and yeah. But I think that is a really valid point, Mike. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And I think that's really important. Just a couple of comments here that I just want to share with you guys and get your response. And the time, as always with these things, just flies by. I know my barrier is myself and motivation, and I think that's right. That absolutely, I get that sense. My biggest barrier is me. I will do online events like Sofa Singers, which makes me so happy, and there's no barrier to doing it as I don't have to leave home. Doing things outside the home seems to be the barrier for me. It takes more effort. Definitely, we get that in terms of the workshops, and going forward, we'll have that blended approach, because people do like having the online space and not having to leave. And if you've got anxiety, and I'm not saying that you do, but if some people have anxiety with leaving the house or all of that, it's a much better way to connect. And sure, aren't we here today? And it's fantastic. So yeah, I've got another one here. Gardening is a great source for serotonin, Claire. So there you go. Absolutely. I certainly get that. I love and I potter. I potter. Another comment, true self-care is recognizing your worth and your value and putting yourself first, which it is without a doubt. Amen to that. I would like to just take a wee pause unless somebody wants to come in here now, because I'd like to come back to the group as we end. We've got 15 minutes left, and like to do just a little bit earlier than usual, the meditation piece. Unless somebody feels that they want to comment on what we've said, or have just, if we haven't covered everything. It's impossible to cover everything in self-care in an hour, but this is a lovely meditation by Cillian here, and it's a calming color meditation. So look, join in with us. Meditation might not be your bag, and that's fine too. Dial back in 4 minutes, we'll be here. But if that's okay, I think it's a good time to do it, because I don't want to rush the end, because I do want to come back with you with some kind of finishing thoughts. So yeah, let's and if the panelists can just tell me if they can hear this. So again, just go with the flow. If it's something you want to join in with us, we'd really appreciate it. But personally, I think this is a lovely one.
As we begin this guided meditation, make yourself comfortable in the chair and just allow yourself to become more relaxed. If you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes or have a downward gaze. And before beginning this calming color meditation, just notice how your body feels in this moment. Just try to pay attention for a couple of seconds. Do not try to change anything, simply notice how your mind and body feels. Feel your body begin to relax slightly as your shoulders drop a little lower, your jaw loosens, and your eyelids start to feel heavy. Take a deep breath in and hold, and slowly breathe out. Now just notice your breathing. Allow your body to relax and your mind to focus on this calming color meditation. I'd like you to create a picture in your mind of the color red. Imagine red of all shades. You might picture red objects, a red landscape, or just a solid color of red. Imagine all of the different tones of red, roses, bricks, apples, sunset, and just enjoy this for a moment. Now allow the color you're imagining to change to orange. Picture the color orange, infinite shades of orange, flowers, pumpkins, carrots. Enjoy the color orange for a moment. Now visualize the color yellow. See it in your imagination, all the various shades of yellow. Lemons, flowers. And just imagine yourself surrounded with the calming color yellow. Let the color you're imagining now become green and fill your imagination with this color green. Endless shades and tones of green, plants, leaves, grass, and just enjoy this for a moment. Now see in your mind the color blue, different shades of blue, water, sky, and just imagine the blue filling your vision. Now allow the colour in your imagination to become violet. Focus on the multitude of purples around you, flowers, sunrise, and just immerse yourself in the colour violet. Now turn your attention back to your breathing and notice how calm and regular your breathing is now. Imagine the colours once again, one at a time, starting with red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. Now picture whichever colour you wish and imagine the colours that is your favourite. And allow your mind to be relaxed, focused, and calm, and just enjoy the feeling of relaxation you are experiencing. Now it's time to return your attention back to the room, become aware of your surroundings, opening your eyes and coming back to the present moment.
So how are we all after that? And I hope we still have the attendees with us, that they haven't gone into a lovely sleep, because I certainly felt that, just like, oh, thanks, Cillian. That is so nice. And the reason why I wanted to put this a little bit earlier than usual is that I want to kind of come back to everybody, see where they are now, and also share, if you have one nugget or one piece of advice, that and to give everybody a space to say that, and in a very practical way, how you can actually build self-care into your daily life, so it's not too much. And that came up in one of the questions there, a chore. And it is that one piece of advice. It's the motivation piece. It's, you know, how do you actually do it and keep at it and maintain it? So I might come to Cillian. I might come to you first. I'll just go around everybody.
Perfect, Margaret. Thanks a million. So I think it's just taking baby steps towards it, you know, taking that step-by-step process and figuring out what we want to incorporate into our daily self-care or weekly self-care or whatever it is. And it's just having, it comes back to that self-compassion by doing the best you can with each day that comes and focusing on the best you can with the 24 hours in front of you. And sometimes it might be hour by hour or minute by minute, just trying to incorporate self-care. But it's really important just to be kind to yourself along the way. That there's so many things that we all have in our own lives that will positively contribute to our own self-care and well-being. It's just about figuring that out for ourselves. And I think self-care is not just a once-off thing, it's a lifelong thing that we constantly have to be tipping away at each and every day, that will just have a good and a compound ripple effect over time. So hopefully that answers that, Margaret. Thanks.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's that awareness piece, you know, and self-compassion again, which is, we could all do with a great dose of that. Claire, I might come to you next.
I would say start small. One of my favorite things to tell myself when I feel overwhelmed or I have a challenge in front of me that maybe I'm not sure if I can actually get through it, is how to eat an elephant, small bites. You know, and that, when I say that saying to myself, then it just reminds me that just to break things down into pieces that I can manage, and I know what I can manage, and then, you know, tackle it like that. So start small. Some days you'll be successful, some days you won't, but eventually, hopefully, what will happen is that you'll have more days that you're successful than days that you're not, because it'll be a new habits. You know, anyone is trying to get a new habit into their life. It's about changing old habits as well. And sometimes the old habits we did are ways of coping, but they're not necessarily serving us in the best way. So, you know, and it can be hard to incorporate new habits into our lives and new ways of thinking and new ways of being, but it can be done as well. But it is, start small, have the compassion, like Cillian said, you know. And I would also say, try everything. Like if you see someone mentioning something and think, you know what, I might give that a go, even if it's 10 minutes of it, try it. You'll either go, no, that's not for me, or yeah, maybe I'll put it for maybe later, or God, I really like that, I'm going to give that another go. You know, because there's so many different options out there in terms of what a person can do for themselves. And until you've tried everything, you know what I mean, there could be things out there that suit you and you might really, really like to do it. It'll be easier to incorporate something then that you're like, oh, I really liked that, you know, into a daily routine or a weekly routine. That would be my advice. Just be, like as Kane said, be kind to yourself, take it easy, take your time, find what works for you with your abilities and your time frame and what you can do for yourself.
I love that, Claire, and I love that idea of habit forming. And you remind me, I used to always say that to my kids, particularly when they were doing exams, how do you eat an elephant? So actually, it's really funny hearing you say that. Yeah, habit forming, it's a real positive habit. And if we've got bad habits, we can change them into good ones. So really brilliant practical advice. Thanks, Claire. Mags, I'll come to you next. So one piece of advice.
Yeah, I suppose I'd actually want to listen to my own advice, because I've been finding it hard lately to get out and get those walks, and you just need that small bit of motivation. And I just saw something else that I could do with another charity, and to use that, I kind of need that to motivate me. And you kind of build up a relationship on Facebook then with other people, and we support each other, which is great. Or you could actually, as Mike said before, meet up with somebody. We have a walking track here in Kildare, so you could meet up with somebody and go for a walk. But it's just to get the little bit of motivation to get out. But what I actually found fantastic was, and I love doing it, is walking in the rain. You just put on old clothes, a raincoat, and go out and walk in the rain, and there's nothing like it. So yeah, it's just the little bit of motivation, I suppose, would be a little bit of a barrier, but you can come over that, because I always think back, and I felt great when I was doing that, and just to get that feeling back again, that's motivating me now to do that. Yeah.
Great practical advice there in terms of finding, that kind of external motivations, and then you got the internal one, which is that felt really good, I should do that again. Brilliant advice there, Mags. And just somebody they just missed the last question. The question at the minute is just, what one piece of advice would you give to people and to yourself as to how you can incorporate self-care into your everyday life? So brilliant, Mags. Thanks for that. I've got another comment there, but I'll just come to you, Aoife, just again, and then I'll move on to Mike. One piece of practical advice about how you can build self-care into your day.
Well, I was kind of thinking there when you asked the question, and then everyone that went before me kind of stole the things that came into my head. But I suppose for me, yeah, taking it small so that you don't get overwhelmed. And I suppose another thing would be to maybe, try lots of different things, and to even make like an actual list of self-care activities. So on the days, that maybe you're struggling a little bit more and you can't, something isn't just coming into your head, even having that physical list in front of you, or like Claire said, having the RAP plan, that you can just go to that and you can pick out one or two things maybe on that to try. And if something doesn't work, then, you have that list and you can maybe try something else. And hopefully, there should be something on the list then that might be able to help you. So I suppose that's my one piece of advice.
Again, really practical, particularly, if you're kind of got so many things going on in your mind, just having a list, ticking them off, and just keep trying. Brilliant, Aoife. Mike, I'll just pass it to you. Again, one piece of practical advice.
One piece is, I would say, even Cillian's video there, it was that was the best 4 minutes of the day as far as I'm concerned. And when you look at it, we all breathe every day. We breathe non-stop. So if we become conscious of our breath, so we don't if somebody's looking at, well, how do I start? Because when we look at all our troubles, all our problems, no matter what we do, is when we practice self-care, they'll still be all there. But we need a break, we need a rest. So that little bit of time out, whatever activity we do, that'll give us, the nourishment or the strength. Then maybe taking one bite at a time after that. But unless we look after ourselves, so start small, as Aoife said. And for me, it's like breathing, because I know my anxiety, I start holding my breath when I'm in traffic lights. So now I'm very conscious. So even like, you can do that at any time. You could be cooking a dinner, you could be in work, in a meeting, but you become conscious of your breath. And that actually will slow you down. It's a physical thing, calm in your body. So again, what I think, as Claire said, give everything a go, providing it's legal, and and you're not harming anyone, children, animals, or anyone in the process. And but again, it's and it's to keep going, and that's the piece.
Brilliant, Mike. And again, I love that kind of just connecting with the breath. Really, really good. We've just a couple of comments. Even a few minutes of meditation is great. I think it helps not to think. I have to do an hour of X, Y, Z, break it down to small chunks of time, perhaps. Brilliant advice there. And then again, just a nice piece, just a nice comment. Thanks, folks. Really enjoyed the chat. Refreshing to listen to. We're at the end. I just want to do a little bit of signposting if we can. I also want to share with you, if I can, a little feedback form. If I can just dump it in the old, if you have time, it just really helps us to develop this webinar series with Mental Health Ireland. And I never even thanked Mental Health Ireland. Oh my goodness, Claire, what am I like? So I'm just going to put this in now. So if after you have some time, please do that. And we'll send you on some signposting as well. So I'm just going to share my screen there with you. And yeah, again, just a little bit of a plug. First of all, thank you to my panelists, and I'll just pass you to say goodbye in a couple of secs, but you've been absolutely brilliant. Thanks for your honesty and just, you know, having just great insight into the subject. Self-care is tricky, and you've been very honest about it, and I really appreciate that. And thanks as well to Mental Health Ireland for providing us with this platform and giving us all the support. We really love doing these every month, particularly with Claire, so thanks for that. Just giving a quick plug for our August workshop. If you fancy doing a little bit of self-care and going, having a bit of a deeper dive even into self-care, we're running 2 self-care workshops in August, and you can sign up for those on Eventbrite or contact myself, Margaret at mentalhealthireland.ie. And join us next month for Let's Talk Boundaries, where we really get into the nitty-gritty. That's going to be a tough one, Claire, I can imagine. And also, we will have this as a recording that you can share or review if that's something you want to do, on our YouTube channel. And also you can find us on Anchor FM at Midwest Areas or on Spotify, and we are the Wellness Panel. And we'll also start putting up some of Cillian's brilliant meditations there. And I just want to give a shout out to Claire, to yourself in terms of your contact details there. Yeah, again, just want to say goodbye. And I'm just going to pass you on to everyone. I'll stop sharing here now so I can see all your lovely faces. So Cillian, just want to say goodbye to everybody and we'll shut everything down.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Margaret, and thanks to everyone, Mags, Mike, Claire, and Aoife, and all the attendees as well. Hopefully you took something away from today's session as well, and we'll see you again soon next month at the next Let's Talk Boundaries webinar. So thanks a million. Great stuff. And Claire, do you want to say goodbye there?
Yeah, thanks very much. Really enjoyed hearing about other people's processes as well, which I always find things that I can incorporate for myself. I'm always learning. Every day is a school day. Thank you so much for having me. As I said, really enjoyed, and see you next.
Great stuff, Claire. Thanks. Mags, do you want to say your goodbyes?
Yeah, just like to thank all the other panelists. And it was my first webinar and I really enjoyed it. And self-care was such a broad subject. So yeah, it was great to get the tips. So yeah, thanks very much, Margaret.
No problem at all. And just before I hand you on to Aoife, just a question there. Will attendees receive the recording? Yes, afterwards you'll get a very brief learning pack with signposting in it, and one of which will be the link to the podcast and to the video as well. So thanks for asking that question. Aoife, do you want to say goodbye there?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Margaret, for hosting. You were fabulous as always, and thanks to all the rest of the panelists and for everyone for taking the time out of your day to come along and listen to our discussion. I really enjoyed it, and like Meg said, my first webinar as well. So thanks for having me. Really looking forward to the next one. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Aoife. I really appreciate that. And thanks to yourself and Mags for first time out. You'd never think it. You were just, you know, so as I said to you before we began, it's just a conversation and it was just brilliant. So thanks for all your brilliant contributions. I'll pass you on to Mike now in a second, but just want to say, I got a nice comment there. Thank you so much. Gave me a lot of insight into self-care, and that's what it's all about. Thank you so much for giving us that insight. And have we lost Mike? I think we might have lost Mike. Well, I'm sure if he was here, he'd say his goodbyes. And I just want to say thank you all to the panelists. You've been absolutely brilliant as always. See you back here next month. And I hope you can join us for Boundaries. And yeah, I'm going to shut down the webinar now. And I hope whatever you do, try and incorporate some little piece of self-care, even if it's just getting a nice coffee or, you know, or just watching the bit of reality TV. Claire, I know exactly what you're talking about there. Okay, take care. Have a great day and hope to see you next month. Bye.